Husker Sports with Sports Nightly. First, tonight's sports headlines.
Good evening, I'm Tim Curran. Georgia Bulldogs quarterback Jamie Newman is opting out of the 2020 season due to coronavirus concerns. Yahoo Sports was the first to the story. The Wake Forest grad transfer will reportedly start to prepare for the 2021 NFL Draft. USC transfer JT Daniels is now expected to start for the Bulldogs. In Major League Baseball news, New York Yankees closer Aroldis Chapman has been suspended 3 games, while his manager Aaron Boone, as well as Rays manager Kevin Cash, have each been suspended a game apiece. The suspensions are a result of a flare-up between the two teams last night in the Yankees' 5-3 win over their AL East rival, as Chapman threw a fastball at Rays pinch hitter Michael Brousseau's head. In NBA playoffs action, Game 2 of the Eastern Conference semis is underway. Miami leading that one 22-16 with about just under 5 minutes to go there in the first quarter. The Heat lead that 1-0. Also, Game 7 of the Western Conference first round is coming up later here tonight between the Thunder and the Rockets. That series, of course, tied up at 3-3, set to start there at 8 o'clock. Moving on to Major League Baseball, one final already from earlier today was the Rockies taking down the Giants by a final score of 9-6. Games in progress. St. Louis Cardinals leading the Reds 1-0 in the top of the second. Also, the Orioles trail the Mets in the big way, 9-2 the score in the bottom of the ninth. One of the game in progress, Blue Jays and Marlins, no score between them two in the bottom of the second. And in the NHL playoffs, one game to get underway. Game 6 of the Western second round. Avalanche will be taking on the Stars at 7 o'clock. Dallas leads that series 3-2. Live inside the Husker Sports Network studios, Adam Curran.
Your state. Your team. Your show. This is Sports Nightly.
Bowers awaits the shotgun snap, sends the tight end in motion. They roll right. Bowers throws, pass is knocked away. Eli Sullivan knocked the football away, and the Huskers have a goal line stand, taking over the 1.
Now, let's check the pulse of Husker Nation with your hosts, Greg Sharp and Ben McLaughlin.
Well, the NCAA today must be wanting to send a message to Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren, because they have put their 600 employees on the furloughs for up to 8 weeks. Obviously, it's to get back at Kevin Warren for canceling fall sports in the Big Ten Conference. So, Ben, do me a favor. Can you get that off to Pat Forty so that he understands that?
Yeah, I'll add that to the list for old Patty Boy to throw in his next article.
Isn't that something? I'm sorry to be stuck on that, but, I mean, that guy with those shots, mainly at Nebraska, I think he had to throw Iowa in there, too, because they did cancel sports. And Pat Forty, who's a writer for Sports Illustrated, who had the John Deere comment about Nebraska, and that's they should just get back on their John Deere tractor and be quiet when they were making noise about wanting to play football. Pat Forty has a daughter who's a very good swimmer at Stanford, who earlier this summer, eliminated like 9 or 10 sports because of the loss of revenue that they knew they were about to get and did get this past spring and about to get in the fall. And then he had the cut about, Nebraska's just cutting staff members just to get back at Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren for not reconsidering adding football. Just unbelievable. But the NCAA certainly feeling the effects. The NCAA lost by far their biggest revenue producer back in March when the NCAA tournament was canceled. The NCAA basketball tournament for the NCAA funds about 90% of the NCAA, Ben. It's a huge, huge money maker. I mean, the wrestling championships kick some in. The College World Series kicks some in for them, but 90%, much like football at Nebraska is about 90% of the revenue, the NCAA tournament for the NCAA generates about 90% of their revenue. So they're hurting because they didn't have their big revenue producer back in March. And so they announced that cost-cutting measure today. So I just want to be sure that Pat Forty gets notification of that so that he can keep track. He obviously is keeping track of all this. Big show coming up here tonight, coming up here in a few minutes, another edition of the Husker Huddle with Jeremiah Searles. He's going to sit down with Brandon Kinney. Brandon Kinney was a really good wide receiver for Nebraska, and part of that junior college pipeline that the Pelini staff had going there for a while. Looking forward to that conversation here in a few minutes. Really looking forward to having Fred Hoiberg with us in hour number 2. We're going to have him at the top of hour number 2. We checked this out, Ben, and I can't believe this. We haven't talked to the coach since mid-April. I thought we had him on in May. We haven't. Long overdue. Can't wait to catch up with the coach to hear about this team, which is really, in a lot of ways, a new team with a lot of new faces. It does have Thor and Ivan are back. The 3 young guys who sat out last year are back. Kalarope is back. So there's a handful of guys, but also a big influx of newcomers to the team. We'll just get an update from the coach on what's happening and what is he hearing. What's he hearing for the upcoming season? We did tell you last night that John Rothstein from CBS Sports tweeted out that the recommendation from the NCAA to a full committee is to start the season the week of Thanksgiving. There's been talk about bubbles for basketball teams, get teams together for a handful of days and play each other. So maybe you go to a neutral site and you play 3 games you bring in 4 teams and you round robin it over a couple of different days so you get some games in. And, Ben, I got to believe that if they start November 25th, that there'll be room for some non-conference games. I don't think you start November 25th and just say, we're going to play the conference only. I think you could bubble up some things and maybe you still do some of those tournaments. Maybe you still have some of those where you send teams to locales and they get 3 games over 4 days. And Nebraska is right now scheduled to be a part of a tournament in South Carolina, and it's before November 25th, so that would either need to be moved. So I think there's still a lot up in the air, but that would make some sense to me if you have some of those tournaments in sites that you send everybody there and you get 3 games in a 3 or 4 day stretch.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that is doable, and I think the big key to all of this conversation, Greg, continues to be the rapid testing. Is this something that can be applied to those tournaments where not only are they isolated, in their hotel rooms, but you could test those guys every day, so and make sure everybody's good to go. So yeah, I think there is a lot of appeal about a tournament like that, about being able to pull that off. And confidence and being able to just execute an idea at this point just sounds good to me. And I think we're whether we're talking about football, basketball, or baseball, Greg, I feel like we're starting to have the tools to be able to do this, to be able to solve some of this stuff and make some of this stuff happen. Whereas a month ago it was an idea. I think now it's more than idea, and we can start to implement some of this stuff and make sure things get done.
Yeah, the rapid testing, I think, is coming in a hurry. Maybe within the next 4 to 6 weeks, that would easily be in time for basketball. And I think that'd be a game changer for them, where they could maybe even almost have a semi-normal season if that rapid testing comes, and they can kind of keep their teams bubbled up a little bit on campus, keep them in the same dorm, keep them in the same living locations. So a lot to talk about with the head coach. We'll do that in hour number 2. Also in the second hour, Lane Grindle will stop by. He's our Major League Baseball insider. We'll get his thoughts about the trade deadline that came earlier this week. Who helped themselves? Who caught his eye? We'll get that. Buy Sell is back in hour number 3. We'll have some fun. All the guys will join us for Buy Sell. We've kind of done it into more of a roundtable of our entire group. It's been fun the last couple of weeks. We'll continue that here tonight. We do have a Game 7 tonight, Ben, in the NBA. Had one last night. Wow, what a finish with Denver and Utah. Utah missed a 3 at the gun that would have won the game for them. They end up losing, so Denver wipes out a 3-1 deficit and wins that series. They win the last 3 games to move on in the NBA playoffs to face the Clippers. Tonight, you have a Game 7 between Houston and Oklahoma City. We all predicted last night's winner, although when that shot left Conley's hands, I wasn't sure we were going to be right because that thing looked like it was going to go down for the Jazz. Who you like in this one tonight?
I feel like my NBA predictions have been so terrible, and I just have, I'm just gonna, flip a coin. But man, yeah, you're right. Last night, not to avoid the question, but I kind of thought the same thing. It just one of those. You just kind of get that feeling in your gut that's going to happen. That's going to drop. Obviously, with the 2 games in progress, the Heat and the Bucks, Miami looking very good. Obviously in Game 1 and looking good so far in Game 2, but. In a Game 7, oh, man, my gut tells me Houston, but there's just something about the way OKC's playing right now. Like, they just don't care. You know what I mean? Like sometimes teams kind of have that attitude where, they're not the favorite, probably middle of the pack, and that's the case for the Thunder right now. You got a veteran point guard in Chris Paul that's just like, guys, let's just go do this thing, and that's kind of the gut I'm feeling right now. So I'm going to say Houston, but wouldn't shock me at all if the Thunder win.
I'll go Rockets. I think the Rockets win this one tonight. I think Harden probably carries that team. I think he has a big game tonight. I think the Rockets advance. How odd is it that you've got in the East, last night you had a Game 2, and tonight you have a Game 2 with the Bucks and Heat playing tonight. Last night it was the Celtics playing Toronto. And in the West, you've had 2 Game 7s. I mean, look, the conferences are way off whack here. Before a Game 7 happens tonight, you're going to have both East Conference series through 2 games of their series, and they've gotten off whack a little bit. The NHL's not nearly off as much as that, but it has been interesting. I do think the basketball has been pretty good now. I know a lot of people are having a hard time stomaching all the politicalization of the NBA with the way they've kind of conducted business down in Orlando. But I will say, I think the basketball's been pretty high caliber, and you've kept these guys where they're not having to travel, so their legs are better. They're not having to finish a game, get on the bus, go to the airport, fly somewhere else to play another game in a night. They're right there where they can walk to their hotel rooms in a hurry after they finish the game, take their ice baths, do all those things. I think that's been pretty high caliber basketball for the last month. I've been entertained with it.
Yeah, there's been some really good stories that's went along with it, and I know the social issues are something that are going to be talked about a lot, and I think that's kind of their goal. But you think about guys like Jamal Murray and unsuspecting characters that have kind of come out of the woodwork to rise up in these playoffs and play well, and then you've got the usual suspects that are continuing to play good ball, but. It's been fun. It's been fun to see. I mean, even go back to before the playoffs started, the Phoenix Suns go undefeated in the bubble. You had 2 1 seeds lose in the first round. You had Damian Lillard go absolutely nuts before he got injured. So there's been some interesting things and some good polls. Luka Doncic hits that shot at the buzzer against the Clippers. So there's been some great games and some fun things that have happened. That kind of make the NBA, for those just casual fans, attracted to it, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Also, want to touch on Iowa State. We announced earlier in the week that Iowa State had come out and said they were planning on letting into Jack Trice Stadium next Saturday when they open the season against Louisiana up to 25,000 fans. Well, they got a lot of pushback, and their school president today said, nope, not so fast. We're keeping the gates closed. So now they're going to go from maybe having 25, which might have been a high mark around the country, to dropping back to nobody is going to be in that stadium for their game on the 12th for Iowa State. So a big reversal there. A lot of pressure from people to the school president. They've had pretty bad breakouts at both the University of Iowa and Iowa State's campus since they came back. At UNL, it's been manageable, I guess might be the word. Just there are a little over 200 positive cases since the students returned a couple of weeks ago there. It hasn't been clean, but it hasn't been just an avalanche of positive cases on the UNL campus. But Iowa State has done a reversal for their opening game, going from what they said could be up to 25,000 fans to nobody there. We'll have a bunch of other headlines that we'll get to. I also want to keep the phone lines open for you as well, 531-500-4686. That's also our U.S. Cellular text line. U.S. Cellular, the official wireless provider of Husker Athletics. If you prefer to send us a text here today, again, 531-500-4686. Take a break. When we come back, Jeremiah Searles will have this week's edition of the Husker Huddle. He'll talk to Brandon Kitty.
Welcome back to another edition of Husker Huddle here at the Husker Sports Network. I'm your host, Jeremiah Searles. Today we are joined by former Nebraska wide receiver, one of my good friends, came into Nebraska together in 2009, Brandon Kenny. Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing well, my brother. I really appreciate you having me on, man. Seriously,
absolutely. So I was lucky enough to run into Brandon. Actually, he was, if I recall, you were late to the Nebraska Greats Foundation, but we won't get into that. I remember you were walking into the thing late. I was like, I think that's BK. But we got a chance to run into you, and you've been doing awesome since you decided to hang up the cleats, since you left Nebraska here. And you just were very open and honest with me about what you were doing. So I thought it'd be great to get you here in Nebraska. I know you live here in Omaha. And just talk a little bit about what your journey's been like since you hung up the cleats and where you've been and what you've been up to, buddy.
Man, absolutely. Well, I mean, hanging up the cleats was obviously one of the toughest things for me, and I didn't feel that I really got the true chance to really go out there and play in a sense. But it was a good ride, and it was needed for my journey. As of now, looking at hindsight, but during that time, I mean, it was good. Like I said, it was ups and flows, it was ups and downs during that process. But after I finally decided to hang them up, it was just a huge process of just growing up, man, and becoming a man. And it's so funny. You think that you're all of these things, right, until, like, the real world hits. And it's like, what is going on right now? But I used to pray for, like, a Pell Grant check to just pop up out of nowhere for me because I couldn't get the grasp of that real world life yet, man. So as I figured it out, man, and got further into it, man, I started to understand my purpose and my reasoning and my why. And it led me to surrender my life to Christ, man. And it's been a great and an amazing journey since, man, because it's so funny that I thought that this football game was what I was shooting for. Well, it was my purpose. It was my goal in life, and it wasn't even close, man. It wasn't even close, and it still blows my mind today to know, like, man, I did all of these things. I went through all these different paths and met all these different people. To be here now, being a light, as a vessel being used through Jesus Christ. So, man, it's been awesome, man. It's been really, really great. I was just married, too, as well, about a year and a half ago. So that's right. So that's been amazing, man. Married life is very, very cool. I will say, yes, absolutely. Happy wife, happy life.
Oh, yes.
So out there listening, please listen up. But it's been great, man. I coach my youngest team. Well, I coach my youngest son football team for the Millard North Junior Mustangs. So I'm a head coach out here coaching that. And it's been phenomenal, man, being able to see this other side of it, the coaching side of it. And I never thought I would enjoy it this much. But, man, it's been so great to coach my little man, but also coach the next generation. And that's the coolest part about it, and pouring into those young guys to now to grow up and go do the same, man. So it's been great, man. It's been a good time.
That's awesome. You touched on something I want to go back to, and you talked about how one thing that I learned too is if you let football be your identity, you become extremely lost when you do hang up the cleats. And I think you talked about it. I know I experienced it. Of even if you don't say football is your identity, it really is, because it's all you know. Yeah. And so with you, and I'd love to hear your process of how did you combat that? How did you combat that feeling of maybe like purposelessness, I think is the word I'm using for. Like you don't feel like you have that purpose, that driving factor when you do hang up the cleats. What were some things that maybe now you are teaching that younger generation so that they don't have to go through that? Or just little things that maybe you've been doing now that you are coaching youth and you are on the other side looking back. What are some tips, or maybe what are some struggles that you worked yourself through there?
Oh, absolutely, man. I would say, Shirley, man, to be honest, I wish, and I talk about this all the time, I wish I would have had Christ in my life during school, during junior college, during college, because at that time I would have had purpose and understood that. But I look at it now and understand that the journey was for a reason, though. I needed to go through that. I needed to see those things. So I would say, for sure, having him at the head, and perseverance, man. After football was over, it hurt. I was bothered. I envied a lot of my friends that played in my class that made it because I felt like I should have been there. So I was definitely at a low spot, but I just persevered at that time. Both my boys were born too as well. So it was knowing that it wasn't about me anymore. That was another big reason why I decided to hang them up, because I was going from, this state to this state, living out of a suitcase. And I said, you know what, man, like it's going to get old after a while. And after a few more times, it was like, you know what, this was the route I took to have kids early. and this is what I have to figure out. You know, I can't chase this dream until I'm 30 years old. So I understood that, man, and I had to be honest with myself about that and start that process and say that it's okay. So to look at it now, it was the greatest process ever because I needed every step of it. I needed every single step to get me to where I am today, to have the knowledge, to have the understanding, now to have the light, to go out to proclaim the gospel, but to also teach the next generation, man, show them how it's done, lead by example, and just pour into them, man. And it's great. It's great. And it's so good when they finally get it, man. And I get it now why so many coaches would be like, BK, you just understand. I'm like, nah, coach, I'm good enough, dude. What do you mean I'm good? So it's like, I get it now. And it's like full of teeth. You're like, come on, see it. So, yeah, it's been great, man. It's been awesome.
That's incredible. I think it's funny you talk about the coaching. So Cody Green actually has moved back to Lincoln now, and me and him have been hanging out a lot. And we both went to a high school football game this past week, Friday Night Lights. You have to get a little football in your life, right? I mean, no Nebraska football. It's driving me nuts. But I was sitting there watching the game, and I was just like, I think I'm going to need to coach when my son gets into high school football. And I text Cody Green, and I was like, I think you're going to need to be my offensive coordinator. And as through this conversation, it sounds like I may have found my receivers coach as well. So I'm fairly certain I'm just going to put together this group of former Nebraska players, and we're just going to coach high school and just run the state. So I think keep your eye on the lookout here in the next 17 to 18 years when my sons are rolling around and we're figuring it out. We'll have to get that together.
Absolutely, man.
I love that you're with the youth. I coach actually high school kids. I train some, but I think that it's really important that we train the next generation of football players, because I think that the generation, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong here, BK, but because of what the recruiting has become and because of what it takes to get kids to school, you put these kids on these pedestals. And I think that if you're not raised not raised but trained, I think is the right way, from a young age of like you have to work for everything, nothing is given to you, that a lot of that gets lost in this recruiting process because you have to just sit there and basically like, hey, you're the best thing I've ever seen. And then you get to campus and it's like, hey, you got a lot of work to do. And they've never been taught that. Do you think that's a trend that's hitting Husker, or not just Husker, but all of college football, which is what you're seeing, the transfers and the leaving and all this, but like, how do you combat that, and how do you just really teach that as a young age?
Man, and it goes back to that perseverance word. It's so funny because the reason why I came to Nebraska wasn't because of any geek or anything special that they told me. It was just that these guys were real genuine guys. Like when I wanted to call and talk football, they wanted to call and talk life. How's this? How's your son? How's family? What'd you do here? Okay, now we're gonna talk football. Okay, how many blocks did you have downfield? How many running backs did you spring downfield? I'm like, man, I'm Coach Gilmore. I'm ready to tell you how many touchdowns and guys I stepped on. So for me, I feel like, again, growing up how I grew up, that was ingrained in me to just be that type of guy. But I do 100% believe that the geek has turned this thing around to where it's like, you know, the whole hat unveil and this and that. And it's like, man, pick the school, get in there and go grind it out and do your thing. And that's my thing, is hard-nosed. That's how Fort Scott was. You know, when we got to Nebraska, that's how Nebraska was.
Yep.
In a sense. So it is sad to see when you do see kids transferring. I remember seeing a linebacker that transferred from Alabama a few years ago. And, like, I seen his name pop up somewhere, and I went in, like, I can't remember his name, but I dug a little deeper. And it's like he's transferred, like, 3 schools. He went from Alabama to Penn State to, like, Maryland. And it's like, dude, that's like giving your job resume, and you're just at a job for 3 or 4 months. And the employer is like, well, dude, you done had 3 jobs in the past year, bro. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things, and you have to understand that. See, and they don't know that. They don't get that because you're not thinking resumes, real world. So it's hard to get an understanding in that, but that's where we come in to have to be able to be that bridge and explain it to these young guys and these young athletes of what this thing looks like and how you're supposed to go about it. So I definitely love that perseverance word, because I think that's ultimately what it is. It's just getting down there and grinding and figuring it out. Because I know when I got there, man, I didn't know the playbook. I didn't understand it, but I thought I was all world, right? I thought I can go out here and play with these guys. And it was like, look, BK, you can't play fast if you don't know this stuff. And it was black and white for me. There was no gray area.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're good, you're athletic, yes, you're great, but you got to know this. So I think it's absolutely that, man, just pushing through.
Absolutely. I think that's a great segue here to talk a little bit about what this Husker football team might be this year. I mean, they've had to persevere through a lot. I mean, a lot of these guys, I mean, these seniors this year have had 2 head coaches. I mean, they've been through ups and downs and seasons that last year were expected to win 8-9 games and they win 4. I mean, it's been a lot. But, I mean, you live here in Omaha. You know the hype. You hear it every year. What were you kind of expecting and what were you looking at, I mean, pre-COVID, obviously, for what this team could have been this year?
Oh, man, look, I was excited because of all the big wideouts that they signed. So, I was excited being a wide receiver guy because I knew this offense was going to be explosive this year. And I felt like Adrian was just going to have a true comeback year. I feel like in that game, man, you can put a lot of pressure on yourself mentally. The social media, and it can get involved. And I feel like even for us during our time, that's when it kind of got momentum, and we were on there. And for me, it started messing with my mental, listening to people, what people were saying about it and things like that. So I was super excited to see it. I believe Scott is the guy 100%. And I believe that he is the guy that's going to be the bridge between the new style generation, but still that old school cultural, hard-nosed, we're going to get after it football. And I think he bridged the gap so well. And it was so funny. I seen him, it was me and Compton was at a game. I can't remember what game it was this last year. I mean, we just went into the training room, and we were talking to Mark for a little bit. This was like at halftime. And, I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. Number 5 is safety. I like him a lot. Is he from Colorado?
Yeah, it's oh, my gosh, I should know this. It's going to be – he didn't play last year, though, right? He was injured? Yeah.
He hurt his shoulder. Yeah,
yep.
He hurt his shoulder. Yeah. But he was in there, and he had just hurt his shoulder that game or re-injured it. He was just in the training room, and Coach Frost came in there, and he talked to him, played with him a little bit, and I think his parents were there too. So he's like, you going to be all right? Okay, cool. And he's like, all right, man, I love you, man, and walked off. And I'm like, wow, dude, like, that's awesome, man. Like, that's building that. And that gave me the perspective being inside to say, like, okay, this guy is it, dude. He loved these guys, and he's pushing for them, and he's coaching them up. So it's awesome to see, man.
Awesome. One thing I wanted to talk with you about here before I let you go is you did the JUCO route, and you came in here, and you got – I mean, there is all eyes on Omar Manning, right? I mean, all eyes, number 1 wide receiver recruit coming out of JUCO in the country. He's expected to step in and do a lot for this team right away. What are some things he's going to have to battle? I know you talked a little bit about the playbook and learning all that, but I mean, what were some of the biggest hurdles for you coming from JUCO to big-time Division I football?
Just not overthinking it. Not trying to compare your last playbook to your new playbook. Putting things together. This is the whole new thing, so you got to dive into this. I would obviously say spend as much time in the playbook room or the room just studying and getting that down too well. But just having confidence in knowing too as well what you're called, like what you were brought there to do, to go out there and have fun, make plays, and be a big time receiver. And when you control what you can control, and let everything else, do what it do, man, you'll be more than all right. And a lot of things that I wish that I had and had an understanding of. Once I got to Nebraska, I figured it out later. But I wish I would have had it going in, opposed to thinking like, okay, I'm going to get in here and compete right away and do this. And it's like, no, man, this is a big curve, and you got to figure it out. You got to be humble to be able to understand that and put yourself low enough to know, okay, these are the steps I have to take to get to where I want to go. So.
Yeah, man, I mean, when I was here, I know that we had a lot of success with JUCO guys that came in. I mean, yourself, Levante, Yoshi, Randy Gregory, Stanley Jean-Baptiste. I mean, we had a lot of success, and it seems like Nebraska's kind of lacked in that success from the JUCO transfer program here lately. Hoping Omar Manning can be the guy that gets us back rolling again, because we're going to need a big year out of him with no J.D. Spielman. So I'm hoping he can be that big body receiver like a Stanley Morgan type that we have. So, BK, I want to thank you so much for coming on here on Husker Huddle here on the Husker Sports Network. Is there anything else you'd like to say to Husker Nation before we let you go?
Man, go Big Red always and forever, baby.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If you forget, he's the hashtag Team Fill Up Your Timeline on Twitter. If you ever need anything, that's an inside joke. He was like the original tweeter back in the day, and he would tweet 100 times a day. So I had to throw that out there. But, BK, we appreciate you here. We're excited. I hope next time you come to a game, you hit me up. We'll be a chance to catch you up.
Absolutely, man.
Greg Sharp, Ben McLaughlin with you. Thanks again to Jeremiah Searles for sitting down with Brandon Kinney. I think the guy that Brandon was referencing was Cam Tater Britt when he was talking about a Husker from last year. Jeremiah blanked out on his name, but great to hear from Brandon. What a fun guy to cover and watch play during his Husker career. Well, I mentioned this going into the break that there's news about the Huskers, the 8 players who have filed the lawsuit against the Big Ten Conference. The Lancaster County District Court has given the Big Ten 10 days to produce additional documents in its decision to postpone fall sports after 8 football players filed the lawsuit a week ago. It's not a total win. This is from Evan Bland, who we had on last Friday from the Omaha World Herald. He's reporting this. It's not a total win for Nebraska players. It won't include Chancellor President's meetings minutes or specific medical information and data considered, but the expedited timetable and full disclosure of league bylaws after the Big Ten redacted more than 11 pages of the 13 that was submitted. So 11 of the 13 pages that the Big Ten submitted were redacted. So that means colored out. Well, the judge is saying, I need to see more of that. So this thing kind of keeps trucking right along. You know, the Big Ten was hoping that judge would say dismiss, kick it out, and go. Instead, now they have to produce more documentation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the counsel given to these players is doing their job. Obviously, you know, I think they're presenting a case to the judge that you know, this isn't just a. You know, it's more than just a statement, I guess. I mean, this is information that is truly wanted and needed, and you know, for the lack of transparency that's been given by the other party, in this case, the Big Ten. It's nice to hear that the powers that be, in this case, the judge is wanting to take a look at this and not just looking at this as disgruntled college kids and poo-pooing it and kicking it to the side. So, yeah, I think you know, all in all, this has been a pretty big success, and I don't know that very many people would have thought that would have been the case outside of this state.
Right, and you know, the legal people that I was talking to said this is in a way a bit of a Hail Mary, and yet here we go. The Big Ten has to go dip back in again, go to their closet of records and pull some things out to supply a judge. Here is a statement put out by Mike Flood, who is the lead attorney for the 8 student athletes. He said, today the Lancaster County District Court ordered the Big Ten Conference to produce more information and documents regarding the vote, as well as the governing documents related to the decision-making process. The court's order recognizes the time-sensitive nature of the lawsuit and imposes a September 12th deadline for the Big Ten to produce responsive documents. The plaintiffs retain the right to use traditional discovery methods, including depositions, as the case moves forward. So they have until next Saturday, which that coincidentally is the Saturday that the Big 12 and the ACC schools open their season. So this continues on. This has got to feel like a kind of a little gnat to the Big Ten. Like, get away, keep swatting it, keep thinking you've taken care of it, and it's not going away. Again, I like I've said all along, I applaud these 8 Husker players because the information that we did get, the parts that weren't redacted the other day, was more information than we've had from the Big Ten. We got that it was an 11-3 vote. We got a couple things out of that we hadn't had before. So we're learning some new things about all of this, and you just know it's driving people in Chicago and probably a lot of the chancellors and presidents around the league crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit funny if you think about it. You know, they're trying to move on and, you know, do whatever it is that they do on a daily basis, which I can't say for a fact that I know what that is based on our lack of information the last month. But this is something that they have to deal with and occupy resources and time to. So, yeah, I mean, I would echo what I said earlier, that this has been a little bit of a success, but I don't know that very many people would have thought that this was going to be. So, yeah, big kudos to the group for getting this done.
Absolutely. 531-500-4686. That's the number if you want to join us. You have some thoughts about that or any of the sports headlines of the day. Need to take our final break of the hour and back with more of your calls next. Hotline brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto Family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. 531-500-4686. That's the number if you want to dial us up with a comment or question, either with a phone call or a text. That also doubles up as our text line. Last night, the Kansas City Chiefs had a little celebration where they passed out their Super Bowl rings to the players and the members of the coaching staff and the organization. And Patrick Mahomes gave away a ring, Ben. He got engaged last night. His longtime girlfriend, Brittany. He took that opportunity to pop the question to her.
Yeah, I'm not sure whose ring was bigger, Pat's or the fiance. But yeah, that was a cool deal. I did see a lot of the highlights. I saw Mecole Hardman dropped his. He was trying to Instagram live as he was opening the box, and he fumbled it. He fumbled it right on the turf. So, but yeah, that was cool. I mean, those banners fly forever, and those rings are something else. So, I'm anxiously awaiting mine in the mail to get here.
Yeah, you just keep waiting. Chiefs are only 8 days away from kicking the season off. It starts next Thursday night against the Texans at Arrowhead. Patrick and Brittany have been together a long time. I think they go back to high school days, so they've been a couple for many, many years. I know sometimes people see that and saying, "Oh, he found her after he became a star quarterback in the NFL," and no, they've been together a long time. A lot of their life they've spent together. Seemed like a good couple, good match, and congratulations to them. So 2020 is not very good for a lot of us.
Yeah, but been good to them. We know they're listening tonight, so we thought we ought to give them a shout-out on Sports Nightly.
I was going to say 2020 hasn't been very good for a lot of things, but for the Chiefs, for Patrick Mahomes, pretty good year for that guy.
Mahomes wins a ring, gets a $500 million contract, gets engaged. Yeah, not terrible.
Wow, crazy stuff. Everybody's kind of rounded into shape. Leonard Fournette, I guess, is now officially a free agent. He cleared waivers. Nobody picked him off that, so now he can go anywhere he wants. I still think he gets signed probably before opening day. Whether he plays right away, I don't know, but there's just that guy still has enough left to help somebody out. I just can't imagine he's on the market very long around the league.
And he's not Le'Veon Bell good to where he can demand that high price tag like he did, or even Alvin Kamara right now of the Saints. Joe Mixon just signed a 4-year, $40 million deal with the Bengals. Fournette's not that good. So, yeah, I think the longer that he's out, the lower that price tag is going to go, and something will get done eventually.
Kamara was back at practice today in New Orleans. I saw a report this morning from our buddy Ian Rappaport, who we need to lock that in starting next Friday with him. You going to be on that for us?
Yeah, I suppose I can fit that into my schedule.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, let's make sure we get Ian locked in for his weekly appearances with us. But he did report this morning that he thinks cooler heads have prevailed, that they're going to get something done in New Orleans with him, and that he was at practice today for the Saints as they get ready for their opening weekend. I like them this year. My pick out of the NFC, though, and you can call me crazy, most people do, I kind of like Seattle coming out of the NFC. Is that too far out there?
No, I don't think it's that far out there. I think they're definitely in that conversation. I think New Orleans probably is, a pretty sexy pick. I'm not saying this team's going to compete in that division, but a lot of people are really high on the Cardinals just because of, the offseason that they had, bringing DeAndre Hopkins into the mix and the second year with Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. So, yeah, I do anticipate them being quite a bit better, but I don't know that they're quite in competition mode. Hard to argue against the Niners, too. I mean, that division's going to be pretty loaded, I think. San Francisco, of course, coming off the great season that they had a year ago with that unbelievable defense. And then what happens at the NFC North with the Vikings and the Packers? I think we can extinguish the Bears and the Lions from this conversation, but I think those two are probably going to be pretty competitive, too.
that West, I mean, the Rams are still a quality team, the Niners, the Seahawks, the Cardinals. That is a really, really difficult division. I think maybe the toughest division in the National Football League. Again, thanks to Jeremiah Searles for sitting down with Brandon Kinney. Next hour, look out. Here we go. The head basketball coach, Fred Hoiberg, going to join us. We haven't talked to him in several months. Looking forward to catching up with the coach and our weekly sit-down chat with our Major League Baseball insider, Lane Grindle. All that coming up next hour.
According to the Omaha World Herald, the Lancaster County District Court has ruled that the Big Ten must disclose additional information on their decision to postpone fall sports. The conference has 10 days to produce the documents. The ruling comes as a result of the 8 Nebraska football players who are currently suing the Big Ten for postponing fall sports. An NBA playoffs action, one game in progress right now. The Heat leading the Bucks 66-60 at the half. It's game 2 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. Miami leads that series already 1-0. Then coming up here later tonight at 8 o'clock, Game 7 in the Western Conference first round, the Nuggets will take on the Clippers. Moving on to Major League Baseball, plenty of games in progress. Right now, Cardinals leading the Reds 3-1 in the bottom of the 5th. Also in the bottom of the 5th, it's the Blue Jays with a 2-0 lead over the Marlins. As we head to the bottom of the 2nd, the Rays enjoy a lead over their AL East rival, the Yankees, 4-0 to score on that one. At the end of the 3rd, no score between the Nationals and the Phillies. The Cubs and Pirates were at 0-0 in the top of the 1st before rain put a pause to that action. Other scores in progress. Braves trailing the Red Sox right now 3-2 to score in the top of the 2nd. Also at the end of the 1st, Tigers lead the Brewers 3-0. Moving on to NHL, a game just about to get underway between the Avalanche and the Stars. It's Game 6 of that series. Dallas leads that 3-2. Live inside the Husker Sports Network studios, Adam Curran.
Your state, your team, your show. This is Sports Nightly.
Snap down, the kick is up, and the kick is good. Here's Lane. Huskers win it 13-10. They beat Northwestern and go to 4-2.
Now, let's check the pulse of Husker Nation with your hosts, Greg Sharp and Ben McLaughlin.
Yeah, we're here. Hour number 2, Wednesday Night Sports Nightly on the Husker Sports Network. Thank you so much for spending some of your evening with us here tonight. Big hour coming up. Going to chat for the first time in months with the head basketball coach of the Cornhuskers, Fred Hoiberg. Also, our weekly sit-down with our Major League Baseball insider, Lane Grindle of the Milwaukee Brewers. The trade deadline has come and gone for Major League Baseball as they're now down to the last couple of weeks of the season. We've passed the halfway point already for the Major League Baseball season. Looking forward to that chat. But let's start it off with the head coach, Fred Hoiberg. Coach, we've not spoken in several months. I hope you're healthy. I hope everything's going well and that you've been able to try to have kind of a normal summer in some ways during this crazy time.
Well, I'm not sure they're normal, Greg, but it is absolutely a crazy time. And, you know, the thing that we have been able to do is continue with our workouts. Our guys have done a really good job. Everybody, once they got to campus, we had a protocol in place to where they had to be quarantined for 48 hours, and then they received their COVID test. And once they tested negative, they were able to start their workouts. So, you know, we kind of strategically brought them back in waves. And early on, it was a lot of individual skill work. And then once we got going with a couple players at a time, we kept them basically with their roommates, just in case somebody did come down with it. You know, we would only have to isolate a certain proportion of our team. But now we actually have gotten into full team workouts. And the reason that we are doing that and we're comfortable doing it is because, you know, talking to our players about the importance of doing the right things off the floor and not risking contamination. Our guys are hanging around each other a lot and spending a lot of time together off the court. They're basically all living in the same area. So we felt that it was, you know, the right move to start getting them on the court together and doing team workouts. And it's been really good. I've been really impressed with the work ethic of this team. I just love their competitive spirit. We've got a sports scientist, Chris Bach is his name, that's done an excellent job of monitoring loads. They have what's called a catapult system that monitors all their movements and their workload, and we're able to plan accordingly as far as how we want to construct a week, you know, as far as how much work we want them to go through. And then once they hit that load, we basically shut them down, which they don't like. They want to be in that gym So it's a great problem to have to slow them down as opposed to kick them in the butt and get them going. And it's really been good. So, love the competitive spirit of our group, and, hopefully we can continue to get better as we go along.
What type of testing and how often are you doing it with this group?
Well, we do it every day. They wear a monitor within a little bit of a halter is what they wear, and then it's got a monitor that they put in the back of it, a little pocket, and it shows all their movements. And we do a jump test with them every Monday that shows if they're how much fatigue they have, if they're favoring certain. For example, if they have a hip that's off, they'll favor the other side of their body, and you can sense that and you can see that. So, again, we had 1 week where our guys came in Monday and you could just tell they were exhausted because their jump numbers were so low. So we were able to adjust, and we basically made that a recovery week. So we're just trying to plan, and there's so many different scenarios that are out there right now, Greg. I don't know when we're going to start. I don't know anybody. If anybody does, there was some things out today that maybe will start end of November or early December, which I think makes the most sense just because your students go home after that first semester, which they moved up this year, and it gives the best opportunity to create some type of a bubble and isolate the players. So hopefully we'll go through with that, but we're just trying to keep everybody fresh right now, not have the burnout factor, and keep them ready to go if we do open at that time.
Coach, we had Bill Moose on a couple days ago. He's had to make some really difficult decisions because of the cancellation of the fall sports and the lack of revenue coming into the department. One of those decisions was to close the training table. How has that affected your guys?
Well, it's obviously it's not ideal. It's very important as far as the nutrition, making sure these guys are fueled going into their workouts. So basically what we have is the opportunity to do snacks for our players. We have fueling stations that gives them protein bars, protein shakes to, get them something in their body before we go in the morning. So we do a morning session in the weight room, and then they're on the floor with the coaches at 9. And then the good thing right now is academically, the academic advisors are actually coming over to the Hendricks facility and doing their tutoring and academic services over there, just again to try to limit as much cross-contamination as possible. Generally, everybody's together, all the sports, but we're just trying to keep everything isolated at this time. So it's worked well with the snacks and the fueling stations. It's been able to keep our guys going, and then hopefully, at some point we'll get the training table going again.
Again, visiting with Fred Hoiberg, Husker head basketball coach here on Sports Nightly. Tell me about this group. I mean, you've had most of them in town for a couple of months now. You mentioned the individual workouts now to the team workouts. What's your feeling about this group?
Well, I'm excited about them, Greg. We're much longer, and we've got more athleticism, I think, on this team. We're still obviously trying to figure everything out this early in the process. But I think we've got good versatility as well. And, you look at a couple players that came back that were probably the last to arrive on campus were our international players, which were Thor and Ivan. And, those guys were stuck over in Iceland and in France because of the travel ban. But, once students were allowed to get back, they are back on campus. So it's been great to have a little bit of continuity with those guys that were in the system last year, as well as the three that sat out with Shamil Stevenson, with Derek Walker, and with Delano Banton. And, those guys have a little bit of a leg up right now just because they understand the nuances of the system. But the other guys are picking things up very quickly. The thing I like is I've seen a high basketball IQ with a lot of these guys. And, we got a grad transfer in Kobe Webster that I've been really impressed with. Great leadership skills. I just love everything that he's about. A great communicator, and a guy that can make shots. 3-year starter at Western Illinois that has played in some big games. You look at Lat Mayan, who I've been really impressed with. Greg, he's a 6'9" kid that came from Chipola Junior College. He started his career out at TCU, and he was basically a double-double guy last year, and a very, very good three-point shooter. We do a 100-shot drill, which is something that I got from my days in the NBA, which we put all of the pre-draft players through. It's basically a series of 100 threes, that the Spurs came up with, and we've been putting our guys through that. Lat Mayen made 86 of them out of 100 the other day, and I've never seen that. So he's a guy that can really stretch the floor at his position. Teddy Allen's has been awesome. He's a guy that he just finds a way to put the ball in the basket, and I guess when you average over 30 in a season, you just find different ways to get it in the basket. And he's a 3-level scorer. He can score it at the rim. He's a very crafty finisher. Shot over 40 from 3 last season, and he's one of those guys that makes tough mid-range shots as well, which I'm not in love with. But if you show me you can make him at a high percentage, then I'll let you shoot him. And I think music to everybody's ears is he was over a 90% free throw shooter a year ago. Some of the other guys that have made improvements, Akal has been really good. He looks good, obviously coming back from last year on this team, got some good quality minutes at the end of the season. Trey McGowan's is one that was a transfer from Pittsburgh. We'll see what happens with him as far as his waiver. But we're excited. We're excited about this group, Greg. And like I said, hopefully we can continue to build great chemistry and move in the right direction.
Has that waiver been filed yet, Coach, for Trey?
It will be filed this week.
Okay. And then who knows, but who knows what the NCAA's timeline will be, but it look maybe promising. It looks like they're allowing some of those to happen. You mentioned the NBA. They've been participating in the bubble down in Orlando, and you alluded to it earlier. Is that gaining some steam in the college game to maybe do some of that to get games in once you get back on the court to compete?
Yeah, there's been a lot of different things out there, Greg, as far as what the specifics of them are. I think in the details are still being worked out. But there has been a lot of discussion on that. And, again, there's a lot of things of, are we going to play non-conference in the bubbles in, neutral sites, and then maybe do the conference games on campus and do a bubble there where you play a little round robin. That scenario has been out there. So there's so many different things right now, Greg, but I still think we're a ways away from figuring out exactly what's going to happen.
How has it, you mentioned the students have been back for a couple of weeks. Do you notice more traffic around town? And you said your guys have been pretty smart about kind of maybe stay within themselves and not get mixed up with the general student population, which is too bad. That's one of the great things about college life is to be able to do that. So that's got to be tough to avoid that temptation, I would think.
It is, yeah. I mean, I was obviously in college and had fun in college, and it's hard, but, we talk about sacrificing, and all it takes is one poor decision to lead to shutting down something where we're making a lot of progress and taking a huge step backwards. And I talked about holding each other accountable in that area as well. If you see somebody going on the verge of making a decision like that, stop them. And, those guys are around each other a lot more than we're with them. So it is. There is more traffic on campus. It's great to see the students back, but we have to continue to be smart and be diligent with it.
You and your staff have not been allowed to go out and recruit. The NCAA has put a moratorium on that, I believe, until the end of September. How much has that hampered you, and what have you had to do creatively to try to overcome some of those hurdles?
I'm just about zoomed out, to be honest with you. I mean, I didn't even know what Zoom was. Zoom to me was a dribble handoff back, as of a year ago. But now, yeah, we're doing Zoom calls pretty much every day, and just did 3 of them today. And it's something that it's been good, though. I'll say this: we've gotten our foot in the door with what I think are some pretty high-level kids, and a big part of that is showing our style of play and the pace that we play with and the shot profile that we created. We just need to be more efficient with it. And I think as we continue on and continue to add the right pieces, that efficiency is going to go up, and hopefully it will add to some wins. The league's going to be a monster again next year. A lot of the players that they thought might make the jump to the next level and go to the NBA ended up coming back to school, which, is great for them, not so great for us. But, we just got to, again, continue to move in the right direction and hopefully continue to add the right players. We feel good about this year's class. Like I said, we're on some pretty high-level kids that we feel relatively good about, and hopefully we'll get good news on that front.
Very good. Well, Coach, great to hear your voice. Good to catch up. Keep everybody healthy. Let's hope we get some good news here in the next few months and get to see the Huskers back on the court soon.
Yeah, always great to talk to you, Greg. Take care.
There he is, head basketball coach Fred Hoiberg with us here on Sports Alley. He joined us on our Sports Alley hotline, brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto Family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. On a Wednesday night, some sad news for the baseball world just came down the pike as Tom Seaver, the greatest of all the New York Mets, has passed away at the age of 75 from complications from Lyme disease and dementia. It was announced about a year and a half ago that he was suffering from dementia. What a terrific pitcher. The Mets, the Reds, I think even the White Sox. He was an answer to a face-off question we had a few weeks ago. But this was one of the most dominant pitchers in the late 60s and 70s in all of baseball, and a pretty good man, according to all the people that knew Tom Seaver. So sad news from the baseball world here tonight. Speaking of baseball, we love to check in each week with our insider, Lane Grindle.
You're listening to Sports Night. His voice will sound familiar.
And that ball's gone. Bye-bye, baseball.
His knowledge is endless.
He looked so fast. It was unbelievable.
He's our Major League Baseball insider.
Just ate a brownie, so I'm ready to go.
Lane Grindle.
Well, the trade deadline has come and passed. Maybe the Padres, Lane, were the most aggressive. Were you surprised about how much the Padres went after things in the last week?
You know, not totally. The Padres have a really exciting, a really good team, in my opinion, but not a perfect team. And so I think they went out and tried to address it the best that they could. And A.J. Preller's a guy that has made a lot of moves over the course of his career, especially in San Diego. There's been a couple of different times where he's kind of, quote-unquote, gone for it. They've been more off-season type of moves. Think of a couple of years ago when he made moves for Craig Kimbrell and Uptons and all those different moves, and they didn't work out when he made those moves. But this is a team that he knows he has that's good, that's going to contend, that's in a really competitive NL West. And so I think he wanted to make sure that they got into the postseason and he could get them over the hump. And I think he supported that team really well. Now, they gave up a lot of pieces to bring some of these guys back in. What they gave up to get Austin Nola was a pretty hefty price, in my opinion. Obviously, Mike Clevenger's going to be a hefty price. I really like the deal that they put together for Mike Clevenger. I don't feel like they gave up anybody that's going to necessarily be a superstar, and they got one of the better, more underrated starting pitchers in baseball back, and we know how valuable that could be in a 3-game series when they get to the postseason. So I really liked that move specifically. I thought the move they pulled off for Clevenger might have been the best one of all the moves they made. But, you know, they got Trevor Rosenthal. I think he's going to help them, and they need a little help in the back of that bullpen. So overall, I like what the Padres did. But when you're making that many moves, you're going to give up a lot of inventory to do it. That's just part of the game.
Yeah, and they may just sense that this is a chance to maybe go steal a pennant and do some damage. And you called it. You said back in July that was a team to keep an eye on. You thought they had the makings of a team that could be a bit of a surprise team, and they've kind of been that. I don't know that any of us saw the Marlins sustaining some success here, Lane, like they have. That's a team you're pretty familiar with. There's a lot of former Brewers on that group.
There's a ton of them in that group. You're talking about Lewis Brinson, and Jonathan Villar was part of that team. Of course, he was part of the deadline moves. They moved him to the Toronto Blue Jays, but Jesus Aguilar's there. Isan Diaz is a kid I got to know really well when he was in the Brewers organization. Monte Harrison is another kid, former Nebraska football commit, that I got to know pretty well when he was in the Brewers organization. So there's just a ton. I mean, Jordan Yamamoto on the mound. Garrett Cooper's another guy that was in the Brewers organization. There's a ton of former Brewers with that team, and their story is amazing. I mean, what they went through at the beginning of the year, and to be in position to go to the postseason with a team that nobody anticipated would be in that conversation. It's really a tip of the cap to Don Mattingly for the job that he's done. He deserves so much credit for putting the Marlins in the position that they're in, and it's one of the great stories of the season so far.
Yeah, and they've got to finish it off here over the last 3 weeks to hang in there, and we'll see if they do. Continuing the brag on Lane thing, the team in the American League you thought was going to be pretty good are the Chicago White Sox, and man, are they red hot now. It was about a week ago that Lucas Giolito threw the no-hitter. He looks like he's becoming a top-of-the-line ace for that staff. I guess you're not surprised the White Sox are playing really good baseball.
No, I'm not surprised. I thought they did a great job when they decided to finally tear it down and rebuild, and it took them maybe a year longer than it should have to make the realization that they needed to go this route, and they made one bad deal at the back end of trying to go for it with their former group, and that was the deal they made for James Shields when he was in San Diego, and that's part of the reason why the Padres are so good, because they sent Fernando Tatis Jr. to San Diego for James Shields. And James Shields has given him a lot of innings over the last few years, but obviously they would love to have that one back. But since that trade, I feel like they've made about every move right. And to get Lucas Giolito back for Adam Eaton Eaton's a very fine player, but Giolito has a chance to be an ace. I love, obviously, what they did with the Jose Quintana trade, getting Eloy Jimenez and Dylan Cease in that deal. Unbelievable return. In my opinion, on sending Quintana to the Cubs, what they got back there. And they've just made a bunch of other really good, strong moves. The Chris Sale return was another good return. Moncada was a big part of that one. Kopech, who's going to be a big player for them on the mound down the road. They've just made a lot of really good moves, and now they've been smart. They finally thought, okay, 2020, we're ready to contend a little bit. We're ready to compete. So they went and they sprinkled in some other veterans along with re-signing Jose Abreu. This is a really good lineup. Luis Robert is going to be an absolute star. Jimenez is already turning into a star. This team's going to be around for a long time, Greg. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be the class of the AL Central, I think, for the next 5 to 10 years potentially.
Yeah, it looks like that. Lane Grindle's with us, our Major League Baseball insider here on Sports Nightly. A team in the American League that has surprised a lot of people is the team you're watching here this week in Milwaukee, and that's the Detroit Tigers. They're above 500. They've been a little bit like the Marlins. They've kind of shocked people. What's your impression of after watching the Tigers last night?
You know, they're the Marlins of the American League. Miguel Cabrera is still good. That's the thing that stood out to me. He was 11 for his last 22 coming into our game last night. He's 37 years old. He's been such a great hitter, one of the best hitters I've ever seen play this game, and he still can get it done at 37. That's one thing that stands out to me. But I like their young talent, too. I don't know that they have the household names that the White Sox have, but they still have some guys I really like. Jacoby Jones, of course, fractured his hand last night. That was a big loss for them because he's been a solid player in center field for them. But I think this is a good team, and they've got more coming. Remember, Spencer Torkelson's going to be up in the next couple of years probably for them, playing some third base. And they have some intriguing arms as well. They have a lot of guys that you haven't really heard of that are really performing in that bullpen for them, too. They're a lot like the Marlins of the American League. I think they'll have a hard time. I mean, they're playing great right now. They've won 6 in a row. I think there's another side to this at some point where they come back down to earth, just because the rest of the Central minus the Royals, I think, are still better. I think the Indians are still better. I think the Twins are still better, even though they just swept them over the weekend. And I definitely think the White Sox are better. So, you know, when you're playing those teams so much in the way this season's constructed, probably at some point the Tigers cool off. Brewers are hoping it starts tonight, but it's a nice team. They're a lot further along than I thought they were. Let me put it that way. I thought the Tigers, when I looked at them before the year, I thought, yeah, they're still quite a ways away. They're a lot closer than I thought they were. And this is kind of bad news for the Kansas City Royals, who I think felt like they were going to be more competitive this year than they've been so far, because they're starting to enter that era where they want to start competing again. They've got some good young arms in that group with guys like Singer and Cowher. And I think that it's going to be tough sledding in that AL Central. I like what everybody's doing in terms of how they're building and how they're competing. You know, the Indians have moved a lot of pieces, but they just keep rolling guys out there that can throw 7 innings and give up 2 hits and 1 run. It seems like no matter who they put in the Indians uniform, they can find starting pitching. So it's going to be an interesting division, I think, top to bottom over the next few years.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, you said the Houston Astros are going to start winning, and boy, like a flip of the switch, that's what they've done. I know they got beat last night 6-5. How did you see that coming with the Astros? What was your crystal ball?
I just think there's too much talent there. You know, the thing about a 60-game season is everything gets magnified. So when you lose 4 in a row, it just feels so much bigger than if you lose 4 in a row in the middle of a 162. And so if you're 4 games under this early in the season, most people aren't going to panic. I mean, we've heard it a million times, but the Nationals were 19-31 last year on Memorial Day, essentially, and they ended up winning the World Series. A couple of years ago, the Dodgers were under 500 well into the early portions of the season, 25% of the way into the season, and they ended up going to the World Series in 2018. So I think that the talented teams, the teams that have been proven winners over the years, the cream eventually rises to the top in those types of moments. And I think that that's what we're seeing with the Astros. They're really good, and they still, Altuve hasn't had a great year, but I think they're still going to be there when it's all said and done. The thing is, though, man, the A's are playing great baseball, and I know they've been idle here because of COVID, but as long as they can stay hot like they've been, they're going to be hard to catch.
Yeah. All right, Tigers right now, what's ahead for you and the Brewers?
Off day tomorrow, and then over the weekend in Cleveland against the Indians, and then back through Detroit for a little 5-game road trip, 3 in Cleveland, 2 in Detroit, and then back home for the final homestand of the year already, Greg. Isn't that wild?
Crazy stuff. All right, we appreciate Lane. Have a great call tonight.
You bet. Thank you.
Lane Grindle, our Major League Baseball insider, joining us on our Sports Nightly hotline, brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. And Lane's appearance with us each and every week, brought to you by Nebraska Realty. Buy or sell that. Oh, hang on. Nebraska Realty. The market is hot. Need some help with getting your house sold or buy one yourself? Reach out to the folks at Nebraska Realty. All right, phone lines open up again for you. 531-500-4686. 531-500-4686. That is also our U.S. Cellular text line. U.S. Cellular, the official wireless provider of Husker Athletics. Ben will rejoin me next. 531-500-4686, the number if you want to dial us up with a comment or a question or fire us off a text, that very same number. Wow, what an hour, Ben. Fred Hoiberg, Lane Grindle. Let's start with the head coach. Boy, he's said a lot of good things about Kobe Webster. He said Teddy Allen knows how to score. Lat Mahan hit 86 threes out of a 100-shot drill. I'm getting the feeling he likes this group that he's assembled.
Yeah, and I maintain what I said. Once this team was kind of finalized, that I'm around some pretty big Husker basketball fans, and a lot of them seem pretty down after, the roster turnover again from last year, losing Cam Mack, losing Kevin Cross, losing Deshaun Burke. I mean, we lost a lot of guys that played a lot of minutes last year that you weren't necessarily anticipating losing, but I think, what this staff was able to do in the recruiting front, position for position, you go 1 through 5, and even in the bench, I mean, I would maintain that this team this year is there is zero drop-off, if not improvements, with just the overall talent on the roster from last year to this year. And I know that's kind of hard to say with, Cam Mack and the season that he put together. Of course, the triple-double everybody remembers, and Kevin Cross really started to bloom last year, and no one really anticipated Deshaun Burke to not come back. So obviously Gervais Green too. So you lose another solid chunk of your nucleus, but I would say I feel just as good about the talent that Nebraska is going to run out on the floor this year than I do last year, if not upgrade some positions. So I think the head coach has every reason to be excited.
Yeah, still doesn't really know, like the rest of us, when they could get started. We did report last night that John Rothstein of CBS Sports said that it came out of a committee to recommend a full NCAA board to start on November 25th, which would be the Wednesday of Thanksgiving week. That seems to be catching some momentum and some ride. And I think if you start then, you're not just going to play conference only. I think you're going to have some non-conference games. But again, still time to work all that out, and you still have plenty of time to improve rapid testing, all those things that are holding up at least the Big Ten as it relates to college football. On our text line, Ben, we had an interesting observation. Somebody said, do you think a Big Ten season is possible if 3 or 4 teams opt out? And apparently this was a topic earlier today on the Dan Patrick show that he brought that up. He's had sources that have been kind of locked into this thing for the last month or so, and he raised that question that there may be some teams that just don't feel comfortable, but that a bulk of the league might feel comfortable to get going, maybe if you get going around Thanksgiving or any point in time after that. What do you think of that? What if you got a couple schools that go, yeah, we just don't feel comfortable? Do you go on, or do you go as one or not? Because Nebraska certainly took a lot of ribbing for saying they wanted to kind of go on their own and put together a schedule of their own. What if you don't want to play?
Yeah. I mean, the logic would tell you that you don't go away from what your conference is doing. But I maintain the fact that if you don't want to play, don't play. We're if especially if it's, let's just use that 60% threshold, even though that's not necessarily directly applicable to this situation. But let's just use that for an example. So you need nine of the group to say that you want to play. I think the two schools that immediately jump to everybody's mind that don't want to play are Minnesota and Northwestern. All right, you guys stay home, watch us play on TV, and good luck recruiting. I kind of feel like that should be the mentality that they have. If you don't want to play, fine, but we're going to let everybody else that wants to play. And I mean, you don't want to say that recruiting alone would pressure coaches into playing, but I don't think PJ Fleck would be too happy sitting on that big fluffy couch of his in Minneapolis, trying to recruit the same kids as everybody else that are still playing. I don't know. I absolutely think that if you don't want to play, you more than have the right to say that you don't want to. But because you don't want to, that shouldn't mean that everybody else that wants to has that opportunity taken away from them.
Yeah, if a majority says we're ready, we feel comfortable enough to do this, and you're right, it has to be a vote of 60% or more, so it's got to be at least at 9. But if you get to 10 and you got 4 going, we just, well, then set her out. But that also should come with some financial repercussions, right? I mean, they shouldn't get to divvy up the TV money with everybody else. If they're sitting on their couch and watching Nebraska go toe-to-toe with Wisconsin or Iowa or whoever it may be, they should have to forfeit that, I would think.
100%. They should have to forfeit that. I mean, why should they be privy to that money when, they're not the ones putting in the same amount of work? Doing the acclamation for the TV broadcast, they're not having to do anything. So, yeah, that absolutely should be a factor in that. And logistically, it could work. I don't know if that was more so the question. Like, just could Big Ten football work if teams, didn't want to play? Absolutely. At that point, you're turning into the Big 12. You just play everybody. Just play around robin and make scheduling pretty simple at that point.
Well, it's interesting because it did come up on the Dan Patrick show earlier today that, that there may not be teams that are comfortable to play, and I kind of see that a little bit. Bill Moose was on Big Red Wrap-Up on NET last night, and he said the earliest scheduling model that they have discussed when he's on that committee to put together the new schedule is the Thanksgiving model, although he hinted that it still, to him, looks like it's going to be the January. We should update everybody, if you're just tuning in, that the Lancaster County Court did come back with a ruling today on the 8 Husker players who have filed the lawsuit against the league, and the court says they want to see more documentation. They've given the Big Ten 10 more days up till September the 12th to provide more documentation than they did initially. So I think if you're the players, you take that as another win, that what you're still scraping for didn't get thrown out by the court, but that the Big Ten is being told to go back and find some more information and supply some more information from some of their meetings that they had when they made the decision back on August the 10th to pull the plug on the football season. So the globe is continuing to spin. And again, I'm proud of those guys because they haven't backed down, and they're getting some answers out of the league. First FBS game tomorrow night. There's a couple of them. South Alabama at Southern Miss. We've played both of those teams in recent years. That'll be on the CBS Sports Network tomorrow night. So, Ben, you can lock in and watch some college football tomorrow night. I bet you're really excited about that.
Yeah, I am. and absolutely to your point about, considering this a win, I mean, there are a lot of people around the country that would believe that this was going to be a thing where the judge would look at that piece of paper, crumple it up, throw it in the garbage, and say next. But that's definitely not what happened. I mean, I don't think anybody got that sense at all. And, as we've been saying all night in the last couple of days, kudos to these young men for taking the initiative and getting answers because nobody else has been able to. So maybe this is the measure that it took.
No doubt. 531-500-4686. That's the number if you want to dial us up with a comment or fire us off a text. We're back with our final segment of the hour next. 500-4686. That's the number to call or shoot us a text if you'd like to. And again, appreciate the one who sent us a text asking about would the Big Ten have a season of 3 or 4 teams opt out. That was well done. Tom Seaver, I mentioned this earlier in the hour, the terrific Hall of Fame pitcher, passed away earlier today at the age of 75 from Lyme disease and dementia. Man, he was a dominant pitcher, 3-time Cy Young Award winner, and again, a member of baseball's Hall of Fame. And for the second time this year, Ben, a Major League Baseball game is in a drone delay. It happened in Minneapolis about a month ago where somebody was flying a drone over the top of the field. Umpires spotted it, and that by league security policy, the teams had to exit the field, go get in the dugout, and wait for the drone to leave out. Well, tonight it's happening in New York, and it is halted for, I think they're playing again now, but for a while it halted the Yankees and the Rays game. Is this going to become a trend, do you think?
That's such a weird thing. Like the idea that like something as silly as a drone, like basically an air remote control car, can have such a profound impact on, like, not just games but almost society, right? Like where you bring those things, there's you have to have a license. There's certain places you can and can't fly it. I mean, they're kind of a big deal, which it seems kind of silly, you know, that just a little thing that you can fly in the air, takes pictures or videos or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a new one. That's for sure. But and to spot that, like who's just like looking around in space and sees a drone, and somebody actually captured it via a camera. Like there's a photo of it floating around. Yeah. You can see it. I mean, it's there, flying in the air.
Well, we used to have a member of our staff that I know owns a drone. He doesn't work for us any longer. It wasn't because he owned a drone. He just decided that he was tired of all of us, and probably rightfully so, left to move on. So, yeah, drone delays in baseball. My goodness. They're going to start delivering packages, I think. I think it's Amazon or somebody is going to start using drones to deliver packages to residences and places. And they said that it's going to save a lot of time. It's going to save manpower because they don't have to have as many drivers to be driving around and dropping off packages. They have to be a certain size, obviously, but, you know, like maybe some pharmaceuticals that need to be dropped off or something that's in a smaller box. I think even the FFA has approved that these drones can start delivering certain size packages. Can you imagine? In 10 years, Ben, we may be going, oh, yeah, that happens all the time. Right now it seems so wild, but in 10 years it might be the norm.
2020, baby. I mean, how many of those movies did you watch 20 years ago that, you know, you would imagine in your kid where technology would take us? It's funny you mentioned the size. I can't imagine there's too many like tool benches or like weight benches, weight sets that are being delivered on drones. But that would be a sight for sure. You know, to just drop that baby down on the doorstep and fly her on out of here.
Take off, head off somewhere else. You know, and I think I think we had a maybe it was a 7-on-7 topic, because we haven't been doing beyond the headlines very long. But I think we had a 7-on-7 topic and then the thing was, what's been the biggest technology change in our lifetime? And for me, it was easy. It's the cell phone. I mean,
yeah,
the cell phone and probably just portable computers. I mean, when I was born, nobody had little laptops and that kind of thing. Those would be the two biggest things. You're a little bit younger. Cell phones were going when you were born, but they've certainly become a lot more compact and can do a lot more things now.
Yeah, I mean, man, even to think about like what my first cell phone looked like and what it was capable of compared to right now. I mean, I was in high school when the first iPhone came out.
Do you have a flip one? Do you have a flip phone?
Oh yeah, little tiny flip phone. Yeah, but I remember when the iPhone came out, I'm like, that's so stupid. Why do you need an iPod that's a phone? Like, it didn't make any sense to me, but sure makes sense to me now, and it's hard to imagine it. You can't go anywhere for more than 5 minutes. Go, where's my phone? Lost it. Don't know where it's at. I mean, unless you're doing yard work or whatever, I don't know. It's crazy.
It was hard on me to get rid of my BlackBerry. I liked my BlackBerry a lot. That was a transition for me to go from the BlackBerry to the iPhone. I liked the keyboard part of the BlackBerry. I missed that. And the beautiful thing about the flip phone was it fit in your hand. You could hide it from people. You could flip that thing in your hand, kind of wrap up your hand in a fist, and nobody would even know you had your phone with you. But it was so compact that it fit in there. But technology. Good hour. Thanks again to Coach Hoiberg and Lane Grindle for spending some time with us. Buy Sell coming up next hour. We're going to have some fun with that. All the boys are going to play on Buy Sell. Can't wait to hear some of the questions we have for everybody here tonight. Come on back and have some fun with us.